Welcome back to IGN House Call, the internet interview show where, well, pants are optional and you can put a green screen on if you want. Today we have a legend in the gaming industry. If you've played Super Crate Box and Nuclear Throne, you probably know him. The one and only Rami Ismail, everybody.
Hi.
Yeah.
Wow.
For our viewers at home, please introduce yourself and what you do.
I'm Rami Ismail. I'm one of a Dutch independent game studio called Vlaambeer. We are the creators of games such as Super Crate Box, Luftrausers, Ridiculous Fishing, and Nuclear Throne. I am also a games tool developer. I make tools that developers use, and I'm an advocate for development around the world. Mostly, I seem to make a lot of games with explosions in them. Especially weird considering I've also made a fishing game with explosions in it, but that's kind of what I do. I make video games.
That's very, very cool. So I've been a long-time follower of yours on Twitter, and I've realized that you're very, very vocal about Muslim representation as well as Arab culture, on Twitter. And as a Muslim myself, I absolutely enjoy seeing your narratives. So there's some characters in pop culture as well as video games that are Muslim and even Arab, but what do you think of them so far?
Well, so far there's not been that many, right? I think the biggest issue is that there's so few that it's hard to identify with many of them. Recently, the Assassin's Creed games have had Layla Hassan, who is an half Egyptian woman that lives in the United States. Her story is very similar to mine. Somebody who is good with computers, half Egyptian, raised in a Western country. And it was strange for me to feel so close to a character, despite her, being her and me being him. But it made me realize that for most people around the world, for most Arabs, for most Muslims, whether they are Arab or not, that is entirely like somebody getting even remotely close is new. We have Altair in Assassin's Creed, who is Muslim. We have Farah in the new Call of Duty, who I think is Muslim. Besides that, there's not that many video games that explicitly make their character Muslim. And even Altair in Assassin's Creed is sort of a mix. Like, they don't really ever say whether he's Muslim or not. They say that his mom was Christian, his dad was Muslim. So it's a little strange for me that there is so little representation of what is effectively a quarter of the world's population, right? There's so many of us around the world, but it also doesn't express itself in other ways. It's not just the characters. It's also our rituals and our celebrations that are missing. A lot of games will do a Christmas special. Death Stranding had like these cute little Christmas hats, and Animal Crossing had like Bunny Day, where Easter got celebrated, but we don't really see the equivalent of that for Eid, for Eid Al-Fitr, or for Ramadan, or for Eid Al-Adha. And it's a little disappointing to me that is, in 2020, that is still the case. And instead of talking about representation, we're still talking about getting the alphabet right.
Yeah.
And that's it's a little frustrating, but I think a lot of it is just people don't know.
Yeah.
People don't know that you could use these things. I think a lot of people are a little scared even to use a Muslim culture because they're afraid they'll do it wrong. And instead of doing the right thing, which is hiring somebody who can help them to do it right, they just don't do it at all. And that's obviously disappointing. That said, I think it's getting better, especially in like the big hero roster games, like the Overwatches, the Valorant, all of those games that are upcoming now, and a lot of fighting games too, Tekken, Street Fighter. A lot of these big roster games are starting to include Arab, Middle Eastern, Eastern characters in their game that have a more defined personality and that are just more interesting to play. And I don't know, I find that very exciting. Like, it's cool to live in this time.
I totally agree with you, especially because there was one Marvel character, like they said like she's Muslim, and you know, even though like she didn't fit like what in my mind, like, you know, like a super Muslim person would be, it was really cool for me because you rarely ever hear about, you know, Muslims at all, and it just makes me want to root for her. It just made me feel so hurt because growing up when I was playing like video games or I had online friends, it was very hard for me to tell people that I'm a Muslim because there's always going to be those terrorist jokes, and I'm just going to have to uncomfortably laugh it off in case people end up not liking me. I mean, that was growing up. So, you know, just seeing these things just makes it it's very nice. And plus, I feel like a lot of, you know, stories especially, they have been told so many times in the same way. Why not just open up some doors for a lot of new stories? Because these are unexplored.
Yeah. No, when our cultures get used, when, you know, a lot of Asian, a lot of Middle East, and a lot of Arab cultures get used, it's usually a set dressing. We don't really they don't really tell a story from that culture or about that culture. They tell the story of how somebody from Western culture comes to our countries and then does stuff, right? And that's always a little, that I think that makes me more angry than the other stuff, because I know, like, I've traveled the world a lot for my work the last 10 years, and I've been all over the world. I've been all throughout Asia. I've been all throughout mostly all throughout the Middle East, except for the places where it's currently not go. And I've gone throughout most of North Africa. You know, and every country you go to is just such a different culture. People have such different tastes of food, such different tastes of music, of history, the architecture, the stories, the mythology, the religions, everything that's there melts together in sort of a reality, and all of those realities are interesting to tell stories about, right? But instead, we've told different stories from different people, from different perspectives about one culture mostly, which is the Western culture. And even though that's there's a lot of interesting stories there, don't get me wrong, I love a lot of those games that I've played. But then you play something like 1979 Black Revolution, and it's a game set in Iran during the revolution. And it's like, oh wow, oh there's stories here, right? There's like interesting political thrillers that you can play. There are historical stories that you can play that will be fascinating. And I think Assassin's Creed keeps coming up in this conversation because I think it's one of the few series that actually gets this right. But every time I play a new Assassin's Creed, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to learn about this culture, right? I want to know who I was and how they lived, and then also, you know, run around and like stab some people. But
as you do.
But the way those games works, it's a joy every time, and I can't see myself stopping playing those games just because even if I don't love the video game, I love the setting. It's such a simple trick for them to use. They just go to a new place and actually research it, and I'm like, what they do that thing. Like, just go to a place, research it, and tell a story. It's great. I love those games.
Yeah, just like the place where you're at right now, where there's a Pizza Hut.
Yeah,
what they did.
This is one of my favorite photos. It's a Pizza Hut. So everybody thinks that the pyramids, so I'm half Egyptian, and one of my favorite pieces of trivia is that everybody thinks that the pyramids are out in the desert.
Yes, I thought that too.
Every movie shows it that way, and most photographs show it that way, because there's actually, as far as I'm aware, there's a rule that if you have the pyramids like right here, there's sort of a triangle that you're not allowed to build in. And that triangle is exactly so that you can take that photo where it looks like the pyramids are in the desert. In reality, there's a Pizza Hut. If you look like right there near the Z here, that's the swings right here. The swings is closer to the restaurant. There's actually a KFC downstairs. The Sphinx is closer to the Pizza Hut than to the pyramids. It's like a 3.5 minute walk. So you can have pizza and go see the pyramids. It's
like that.
I mean, they're kind of the same shape, right? But it always makes me happy to realize that this is how it actually works. I've been to the pyramids in a bunch of games. There was never a Pizza Hut, which is a little bit.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think there's something to be said. I would actually love to. Can you imagine playing like an Uncharted game? And you can just go like, you can just take Nate straight from a Pizza Hut like scene talking to like Sully,
yeah.
and he just walks out and like walks through a little alleyway and he's at the pyramids. People would be like, what? But it would actually be right.
Yeah.
It'd be accurate.
Great.
Yeah.
It would be a great storytelling moment if anybody bothered to tell that story. So
Yeah.
you can use these things to tell incredible stories. I just really
Yeah.
like this Pizza Hut. I'm a fan of this Pizza Hut. I've eaten here many times.
I mean, if it can do that for Spider-Man, get New York so accurately, I'm sure they can do that for Egypt too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think. Sorry.
I think you've answered my next question actually. So I'm gonna jump on down to a new one. So your next game should be Ultra Bugs, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Which
We're
you've
currently
shown off before.
Yeah, we're wrapping up on Ultra Bugs. We actually introduced that at PAX last year, I think.
Yes.
It's a very small game, and it's a very interesting game to me because at Falambir, I remember when we started our studio a decade ago now, and one of the first things we said is we're not going to make bigger games, we're going to make better games. Right. We don't aim to be like a huge team. We don't aim to be 30 people. We don't aim to be AAA. We just really like these arcade games. We really like these simple, small games that you can be really bad at, so that if you practice, you get better. But we don't want the games to be inaccessible. We still want everybody to be able to just pick the game up and play. So, we were very much inspired by the old arcade machines. Right. We just didn't like that you keep having to put in 25 cents when you die. And we really don't like that the games were designed around that. Like old games, arcade games were very much built around making you lose so that you would pay more money. So we decided, well, what if we just make arcade games that are that capture that spirit of like getting better by practicing, but are not built to make you lose in unfair or unpredictable ways. So Ultra Bugs was strange because obviously we messed up. Like Super Crate Box was very small, and then Fishing was a little bigger, and then Luftrausers was a little bigger, and then most recently Nuclear Throne was huge. That was 3 years of our lives.
Yeah.
That's a big game. You start to kind of think like, how many of these games can I actually make in my life, right? If I'm 30-ish now. If I had made a game every 3 years, I have 10 more games before I retire, right?
I mean, if you choose to retire.
Yeah, that's true. But before I would normally be expected to retire in like around 60, 70 years old, right? But even then, like that's 10, 13 games before I'm 70 years old. That's not that many games.
Yeah.
And I want to make a lot more games, but I guess the trick to making more games just means make smaller games. So for Ultra Bugs, we went back and we looked at what we were doing, and we're like, okay, Nuclear Throne was interesting, but is it really that much more interesting than a game we can make in just a year? Right.
I see.
And Ultra Bugs is an experiment. I don't know if this is what people want. Like, I don't know if this is what the market wants right now. But to be fair, people are playing so many huge games. People are playing all these battle hero shooters, all the battle royales, like all these big online creative games, and I don't want to compete with. I can't compete with those. I don't mind competing. Like, it's just, what am I going to do against Fortnite? Like, make a battle royale shooter? Like, it's just that. It seems like a waste of my time when Fortnite does it so well. Like, it's not even that I can't compete with their marketing, or it's just Fortnite is very good at being Fortnite. I don't love playing that game, but every time I play it, I'm like, oh, this is well made. Okay, yep, fair. I understand why people play this. But nobody's making small games.
Yeah.
Like, how many people are making like small, interesting, bite-sized arcade? I mean, there's some people doing it on mobile that are pretty good at it. But I kind of want Ultrabugs to be that game that you boot up. Like, you know, when you've gotten really wrecked in a battle royale game,
Yeah.
you just boot it up and you're like the second one to die. You didn't even make it to the ground or something.
Oh yeah, no, not even.
That, yeah, that kind of thing where you're like in Call of Duty, you're just like, oh, I'm dead. You know, when you're that angry, you're like, I need to play something else. Like, I want Ultrabugs to be the game that you boot up.
A palate cleanser, you think?
Yeah, you're just like, yeah, right. The ginger between the meals. I just want Ultrabugs to be that game. It's really hard. It's really fast. You will. I mean, when you play it, you have like 2 to 3 minutes, and then you're dead. The difference is, are you going to get a high score, or are you not going to get a high score? But no matter what you do, I've never seen, not at PAX, never, I really see anybody live longer than 5 minutes in that game.
Oh damn!
And it's really fun because you just play it, and it gets frustrating if you keep playing it, I feel, except for like players that really into that kind of like punishment, I guess.
Yeah, one more try. It's always one more try.
Yeah. You can get like 5, maybe 10 tries in before you're like, okay, that's too much. I need to play something else again. So then you can go back to Fortnite and hopefully do better. Right?
Okay.
Or whatever you're playing. Honestly, whatever game you're into. I don't like whatever big game you're into right now. And I've been playing it that way. And you know, normally I don't really. So a secret about game development is that when you work on a game for a year or 2 years, you don't like the game anymore. It's just kind of how it goes. People always think that developers are like super in love with their work. We love our work. But also, if you've worked on a game for 3 years, you've made so many bad decisions along the way that you look at the game, you're like, oh, if only I had done that better. Or like, if only I had known that this would be a problem. Or if only I had changed. Like, sometimes it's like, if only I had put the camera like 5% closer, it would have looked nicer. And it's like, you can't change that anymore because you've built the entire game around the camera that work in that way. So I think as you work on a game more, you have more regrets. And you will always see it as like a kind of broken piece of software because you can't take what's in your brain and just make it a video game. You have to translate it to computers, and computers are kind of dumb. So, well, it's true. If you go like, if I tell you like, imagine a castle, right, with a dragon in it, and you're a knight fighting that dragon. You can imagine everything. You're imagining a dragon. It's probably blue or green or something. It's in a castle, so you're imagining gray walls, kind of stone. Like if I tell the computer castle, it's like, what's a castle? Like, well, it's a big building with stones.
Yeah, you gotta program
like,
it to know.
You have to explain everything to a computer. You have to explain which way gravity is. So there's a lot of space to mess up really bad. And you do every time you make a video game. There's just hundreds of choices where in hindsight you look at it, you're like, oh my God, what was I thinking? What did I do? And then when you're done, right, like about a year after you're done, you fall really back in love with your game. Like when you see the responses, when you see people playing, and you're like, oh, this is what, like, it's really hard to stay motivated through a lot of game development because it's kind of a hard job. It's not like physically hard. It's not like, it's just a complicated, strange job for such a weird goal. We're making entertainment that you press buttons and then stuff on the screen happens, right? That's our job. We're basically magicians. We're just sitting here being like, okay, you will now believe that this character you're playing is real, and you will care about this character. Despite them being polygons, and you will care about the characters around you despite them being polygons, because we have tricked your brain into accepting this as real. And I love that. It's so great. we get to do all this cool stuff because we can make people believe that these places are real, that these high scores matter. And you know what? If you believe that they matter, they do. There's a really simple trick that I got taught about what video games truly are. And it was just play a game and just don't believe it. Sit there and just don't take a game you love. Please don't take a game you love.
Of course.
But take a game you don't care much for and just sit there and just don't believe it. And it's really weird because you're just sitting there and you're like, what? Okay, yeah, so it's a stick and I move the box around the screen and the box looks like, it's just this really weird, exercise, but it helped me see what our job is. Our job is to make people skip that, right? With Ultra Bugs, probably for one of the first times in my career, because it's developed as such a bite-sized thing, I don't have that feeling where I'm tired of the game. Like I just love playing the game. It's really fun to boot up when I'm a little frustrated or I'm a little annoyed. I just play Ultra Bugs for like 5 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, and then I've lost 3 times and maybe I've gotten a good high score. But then I'm like, yeah, okay, good, let's go make some stuff.
I think that's the perfect way to sell it.
Yeah, it's been nice. It's been a good game to work on.
Nice. So when can we expect the release, you think?
So we were actually going to release 2 weeks ago, but then the Game Developers Conference happened, and it's this big conference that's supposed to be in San Francisco, but due to the current situation with air travel and the coronavirus, it was canceled. Sadly, that also means that dozens of game developers got stuck abroad without money, without ways to get home, without the ability to pay for costs that they had. So instead, I organized a charity event where we raised money for those developers. Sadly, that did mean that I lost like 3 to 4 weeks of my life to running this event. We ended up raising over $80,000 for affected developers, which was cool.
Good.
But also it means that Ultra Bugs was delayed by like 4 weeks. So we're wrapping up on it right now, actually. Before and after this interview, I'm working on the game. It's very close. The biggest thing right now is we had a really nice release date. We were going to launch on the original release date of Cyberpunk. Before they moved it back, we were like, well, if they don't have that date, we'll take the date. It's kind of the same game, right? But now we have to pick a new date, and I think June is a little busier than April is, so we're gonna have to figure out where our game goes. But when it's done, we'll figure it out.
All right, cool. Ash, take it away.
Okay, so this is my final question before we wrap up. What advice do you have for gamers around the world who are fasting and going through this global pandemic?
So I've been fasting. Obviously, it's Ramadan right now, honestly, I think games have made it. I think just play games would honestly be my advice. Like, the Ramadan is meant to be this communal. A family event, right? Where you hang out with friends and family, you have iftar together, you have suhoor together. And instead, most of us are just sitting alone or with like very small groups at home. And sort of the celebration part of Ramadan is kind of lost. And I've honestly found that being in games with my friends has been very helpful to me now that I'm that isolated. I actually play games in the morning before suhoor and iftar after iftar. I even play some games during suhoor and iftar right now, where I organize little meetups in video games with friends, which has been super fun. But I think Ramadan is difficult enough. Up here in the Netherlands, it's very long days. We have like 17-hour fasts at the moment because we're pretty far up north and it's summer. But the games just help a lot. They're a good place to escape to. When you get into a flow, your brain just kind of clicks off that sense of time, which means that you're late for important things, but also means that your day fasting goes a bit faster.
Yeah, definitely.
So just play games with friends if you can. I use Destiny as Skype nowadays. It's just all my friends are on Destiny. If I want to have a phone call with a friend, I just boot up Destiny and I go play for an hour. But yeah, and I mean, in a way, I don't think there's the notion of Ramadan for me has always been to do something difficult together, right? Because fasting is supposed to be a challenge. It's not supposed to be an impossible challenge, but it's supposed to be a challenge. But it's also supposed to be a communal challenge. There's not been... Everything we know about Islam states that it's not a thing you do alone. So try to make sure that you don't do it alone, whatever way you can. And games can be a really good help in that. I actually think I would have a really sad Ramadan without video games this year.
Aww.
Wow.
Okay. I mean, to be fair, I think all of us are playing video games at home now, especially because you can do it with friends. You don't need to be physically with other people. It's the perfect social distancing tool, yet you can be so close to your friends at the same time. So we're running out of time. Thank you so much, Rami Ismail, for being here today on IGN House Call with us. It means so much to us to be hearing about what you think about Muslim representation in video games. Of course, we'll see you guys next one, so keep it up. Nice. So keep it locked on IGN. Bye, guys.